Hi, before we find out what happens next, make sure to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. It takes a second and really help us grow. Out of the story.
Picture this: strangers in my kitchen, unpacking boxes with my name on the deed. My brother thought it was his win, but he forgot who really owned the house. In my family, balance was never on the table. Caleb always got the praise, I got the polite nods. He was the visionary, the risk-taker, the son who could blow through 3 business ideas in 6 months and still be called ambitious. I was the quiet one, the daughter who worked with computers, as if cybersecurity at a federal agency was just typing passwords for a living. Dinner at my parents' house was always the same script. Dad leaned back, admiring Caleb's stories of networking with investors, while Mom smiled as if every failure was simply part of his genius process. "Your brother has that entrepreneurial spirit," Dad would say, clinking his glass. "Not everyone can handle the ups and downs." Meanwhile, when I mentioned being assigned abroad for 3 months, Mom barely looked up from her plate. "Well, just don't work yourself sick, Lauren. All that staring at screens can't be good for you." I bit my tongue, the same way I had since I was a teenager. They didn't need to know that my staring at screens meant monitoring networks that kept federal systems from collapsing, or that the reason I owned my house outright at 32 was because I'd budgeted every cent since my first paycheck. Caleb bragged about raising capital. I just raised myself out of their shadow. Still, when my agency posted me overseas for a short-term project, I left with a sliver of hope. The house would stay untouched. My savings were secure. Chloe, my little 2-bedroom brick fortress, waited for me on a quiet street where I could breathe. "Don't worry about a thing," Caleb had said at the airport, clapping me on the back like he'd just done me a favor. "We'll keep an eye on the place." My parents beamed like he'd volunteered for sainthood. I nodded, luggage strap cutting into my shoulder, heart already halfway across the ocean. I should have heard the danger in his tone. Not, "I'll keep it safe," not, "Don't worry." Just, "We'll keep an eye on it, like hunters eyeing land that isn't theirs." By the time I boarded my flight, I didn't know I'd left more than a house behind. I'd left the perfect opening. And Caleb was already planning how to take it. Caleb always had timing. Not the good kind, like showing up early to help, but the opportunist's kind, the way he sniffed out a moment of weakness and slipped right into it. My overseas assignment was his opening, and he took it like it had been waiting for him. It started with conversations over coffee at our parents' kitchen table. He told them my house was just sitting there, gathering dust. He painted a picture of me jet-setting around the world, forgetting about the mortgage, about the neighborhood, about my roots. Mom nodded, Dad muttered about wasted property, and Caleb leaned back, satisfied. "She doesn't even need it," he said one night, twirling his glass of bourbon. "Meanwhile, I've got this business idea ready to launch. All I need is capital. Why shouldn't the family support that? Why shouldn't her assets work for us?" Work for us, not her. That was Caleb in a sentence. At first, the parents resisted, at least a little. Mom fretted about legality, Dad about appearances. But Caleb was ready. He'd done his homework, if homework means downloading a power of attorney template and practicing my signature until it looked effortless. Then came Adam and Melissa Clark, a couple Caleb found through a friend of a friend, the type who wanted a house quickly and didn't mind if the paperwork wasn't polished. Adam had the posture of a man who thought rules were optional. Melissa the smile of someone who'd been told one too many times to just trust the process. They met in my living room. My living room. The space still smelled faintly of my cedar candle, but Caleb had scrubbed surfaces and staged it with borrowed flowers. He called it presentation. "You're sure your sister's okay with this?" Melissa asked, eyes flicking to the forged papers. Caleb's laugh was practiced. "Of course. She's off in Europe working government contracts. She practically begged me to handle it." Adam tapped the signature line. "Looks clean." Caleb leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Quick, simple, and under market value. You get the house, I get liquidity. Everybody wins." Mom wrung her hands in the corner. "Are we sure this is wise?" Dad silenced her with a glare. "It's family business. Stay out of it." And just like that, the Clarks were convinced. Cash exchanged hands, bundled bills that Caleb shoved into a backpack as if he'd just won a prize. He was already thinking about the office space he'd rent, the website he'd design, the startup launch party with his name on the banner. "This place has good bones," Adam said, glancing around like he was staking a claim. Melissa nodded, sliding a key into her purse. "Feels like it's ours already." Caleb smiled, wide and reckless. "It is. Congratulations." But when the door shut behind them and silence filled the room, something flickered across his face. Not triumph exactly, but relief, like a man who'd bet everything on one hand and couldn't believe he'd pulled it off. He thought it was over. He thought he'd finally beaten me. And in that moment, Caleb couldn't see that he'd just tied the noose himself. The street looked the same maples leaning over the pavement, same cracked sidewalk that caught your shoe if you weren't careful. For a moment, dragging my suitcase up the walkway, I convinced myself nothing had changed. My little brick house was still mine. But the driveway told a different story. A silver sedan I didn't recognize sat where my car should have been. Curtains I never bought hung in the front window. My key fit the lock, but when I pushed the door open, the air didn't smell like cedar and coffee anymore. It smelled new, bleached, scrubbed. Voices drifted from the kitchen. A man's laugh, a woman's reply. I stepped inside and froze. Boxes were stacked against the wall. A woman I'd never seen was unwrapping dishes at my counter like she'd lived there forever. A man leaned against the fridge, flipping through mail, my mail. The woman startled when she saw me, then offered a smile too polished to be real. "Oh, you must be Lauren. We didn't expect you back so soon." My grip tightened on the suitcase handle. "Who are you?" "Adam and Melissa Clark," the man said smoothly. "We're the new owners. Your brother handled everything. Caleb said you wouldn't mind." My pulse slammed in my ears. New owners? I looked at the folder on the table, papers spread wide. My name was there, curling neatly in signatures I hadn't written. Forged, but close enough to sting. Melissa offered a sympathetic shrug. "We paid cash. It was all above board." Caleb showed us the paperwork. Before I could respond, the front door opened. My parents walked in like they'd rehearsed their entrance. Mom's face tightened when she saw me. Dad only sighed. "Lauren, don't make this harder than it needs to be," Dad said. "Caleb was doing what's best. That house shouldn't sit empty while you run off for months. He put it to good use." "Good use?" My voice cracked. "He stole it. He forged my name." Mom wrung her hands. "He just wanted to help. You're so focused on whatever your job is. He thought this would free you up." I laughed, sharp, bitter. "Free me up?" He took $72,000 worth of my future and handed it to strangers. Adam stepped forward, chin raised. "Look, whatever's happening in your family isn't our problem. We paid. We have the deed. If you're upset, take it up with your brother. But this..." He swept his hand around my living room. "This is ours now." I snatched the papers from the table, flipping through them. My eyes caught on one line that made the ground under us shift. "This property is federally registered," I said, voice flat. Melissa frowned. "What does that mean?" I closed the folder with a snap. "It means Caleb didn't just steal from me. He committed federal fraud. And the kind of alarms that sets off..." I looked at each of them in turn. "You don't want to be standing here when they arrive." The room fell silent. And at that moment, none of them realized the knock was already coming. The silence after my words was heavy enough to press on the walls. Adam shifted his weight like he was bracing for a fight. Melissa's fingers drummed against the counter, and my parents just stared at me, waiting for me to walk back what I'd said. Dad was first. "Federal? Lauren, don't start with that nonsense. It's a house, not the Pentagon." "It's not nonsense," I said evenly. "When you work in cybersecurity for the government, every property you own has to be registered. Any transfer gets flagged." Mom let out a brittle laugh, as if that might dissolve the weight of it. "That sounds dramatic. Surely Caleb knew." "That's the problem," I cut in. "He didn't know, or he didn't care." Adam stepped forward, jaw tight. "Hold on. Are you saying this sale isn't valid? Because we paid. Cash. We've got every right to be here. I turned the forged deed so he could see the sloppy precision of Caleb's handwriting mimicking mine. You bought paper, not a house. And you bought it from a man who didn't own it. Melissa's smile faltered. But your brother said, "My brother lies," I snapped, and the sound of it startled even me. That was when the knock came. Sharp, measured, not the knock of a neighbor or a delivery driver. 3 raps, then silence. Everyone looked at each other, waiting for someone else to move. Finally, I set the papers down and crossed the room. When I opened the door, the woman standing there looked carved from authority. Dark blazer, hair pulled tight, badge raised. "Lauren Whitmore?" "Yes." "Agent Elena Cruz, Federal Cybercrime Division. I need to come in." The room behind me stirred. Melissa gasped softly. Adam muttered, "What the hell?" My parents stepped back as Cruz entered, scanning the room with sharp, assessing eyes. She gestured toward the papers on the table. "Are those the documents?" "Yes," I said, passing them over. She flipped through quickly, then looked up. "Forged. Whoever handled this transaction committed felony fraud. Because this property is on our registry, alarms went off the moment the transfer hit. That's why I'm here." Dad's face went red. "This is ridiculous. It was just a private family sale. No need to drag in feds." Cruz leveled her gaze at him. "Private sale or not, forging power of attorney to sell federally registered property is a federal crime. This isn't family squabble territory anymore." Mom wrung her hands. "It must be a misunderstanding. Caleb wouldn't—" Cruz cut her off. "Ma'am, I don't deal in misunderstandings. I deal in evidence. And right now, every piece of evidence points to your son." Adam swore under his breath. "We paid cash. You mean we're screwed?" "You'll have the chance to explain your role downtown," Cruz said coolly. She set the folder back on the table. "For now, no one leaves. More agents are on the way." Her radio crackled with static, and in the distance I heard footsteps on the porch, heavier, multiplying. Mom whispered, pale, "Lauren, what did you do?" I met her eyes. "I didn't do anything. Caleb did. And now it's too late to hide it." The second knock thundered louder than the first. Agent Elena Cruz laid the forged deed on my dining table as if it were contaminated. Her gloved fingers pressed flat against the pages, pinning them there so everyone could see. No one in the room breathed for a long moment. "This isn't a misunderstanding," she said, her voice steady, crisp, practiced. "This is fraud. Someone forged a power of attorney, signed documents they had no legal authority to sign, and exchanged cash for property they didn't own. That's a felony under federal jurisdiction." Her words seemed to echo off the walls. Dad scoffed first, because of course he did. His face turned ruddy, the way it always did when someone dared to criticize Caleb. "That's a bit much, don't you think? It's Caleb, my son. He was only looking out for the family." Cruz turned her head slowly and fixed him with a gaze sharp enough to cut glass. "Your son put his sister's career and federal clearance at risk. You may see a family squabble, sir. I see criminal intent and material evidence." Mom gasped, her hands trembling as they clutched at his sleeve. "Felony?" That word, no. Caleb wouldn't. He already did. The words came out of me harsher than I intended, but I didn't regret them. "He saw me gone and thought my house was free for the taking. And you let him. You've been letting him get away with everything since we were kids, and now this is where it landed." Melissa Clark's hands trembled on the counter, her knuckles white. "Wait, are you saying this deed isn't real?" Cruz turned the page toward her, the forged signature gleaming in the lamplight. "Forged. Whoever produced this knew just enough to mimic handwriting, but not enough to fool our system. The transfer triggered an automatic alert the second it hit our registry." Adam cursed under his breath, pacing in a tight circle. "We paid him, all of it, cash. You're telling me this was for nothing?" Cruz didn't flinch. "If you gave money in exchange for stolen property, then yes, you've been defrauded. That makes you victims in the eyes of the law. But you'll still need to explain why you participated in an off-the-books sale with no oversight, no title company, and no escrow. Federal investigators don't look kindly on people who try to cut corners. Adam's face flushed crimson. We thought it was a family deal. That's how he presented it. Cruz leaned forward, her voice lowering until the whole room strained to hear. You thought wrong. The silence pressed down like a weight. Mom turned her eyes to me, as if I had summoned all this just to spite them. Lauren, tell her. Tell her Caleb didn't mean, I snapped. Stop saying he didn't mean it. He forged my name. He stole my money. He gambled with my clearance, my career. And you're still defending him like it's nothing. Dad's jaw tightened. He muttered something about family unity, but his voice didn't carry like it used to. Cruz's radio crackled at her side. She lifted it to her mouth, listening. Her dark eyes flicked toward the door. They're here, she said. Before anyone could process it, the front door creaked open. Caleb stepped inside, backpack slung carelessly over his shoulder, a grin plastered across his face. He whistled as if he were walking into a party, not a crime scene. The grin faltered when he saw Cruz by the table, badge gleaming, the forged documents spread out like damning evidence. His gaze swept the room, the buyers pale and anxious, our parents frozen, me standing steady. What's all this? He asked, voice aiming for casual and missing by a mile. Cruz straightened. Caleb Whitmore? He hesitated, just long enough to betray himself. Then the grin snapped back on. That's me. And you are? Agent Elena Cruz, Federal Cybercrime Division. We're here about the forged transfer of this property. Caleb's laugh was too loud, too forced. Forged? No, you've got it wrong. This was just a private sale, family business. I was helping my sister. He shot me a look sharp as a knife. She's been too busy running around the world to deal with the house herself. I folded my arms across my chest. Helping me? You bled me dry. He spread his hands, palms up, the performance smooth from years of practice. It's not like you were living here. Better to let someone else put it to use than waste away empty. I took initiative. Isn't that what everyone's always asking of me? Mom rushed forward and grabbed his arm like she could shield him with sheer proximity. Caleb, it's fine. We'll explain. They don't need to make this into... Cruz's voice sliced cleanly across hers. Forgery is not fine, and this is no longer just family drama. This is a federal matter. Caleb's grin twitched, then hardened. Federal? Over a house? Come on, that's absurd. Absurd, Cruz echoed, her tone flat, is thinking you can fake a power of attorney, sell federally registered property for cash, and walk away untouched. Did you think no one would notice? His eyes darted between us, calculating. Look, maybe I simplified things. But my sister will tell you I didn't mean harm. Right, Lauren? Every face in the room turned to me. I didn't hesitate. No, Caleb. Not this time. His jaw clenched. You ungrateful. Enough, Cruz said. She set the papers back on the table and folded her arms. Mr. Whitmore, I need to ask you some questions, starting with, who exactly gave you this idea? Caleb leaned back against the wall, swagger faltering, but still trying. It wasn't an idea, it was opportunity. My sister's always off on her little computer jobs. She barely cares about this house. Why shouldn't I make use of it? Why should she have everything while I scrape by? Dad opened his mouth, ready to agree, but Cruz raised a hand to silence him. So you admit you forged her signature? Caleb blinked, then barked a laugh. You're twisting words. I didn't forge anything. Maybe I signed on her behalf. Without her consent. Cruz pressed. He shifted, the backpack strap creaking under his grip. She would have agreed if she were here. I was saving her trouble. Melissa's voice cut in, sharper than before. You told us she gave you power of attorney. You said she signed off. Caleb's head snapped toward her, eyes flashing. And you believed me, didn't you? You didn't care as long as the price was right. Adam stepped closer, face red. We handed you $70,000 in cash. Don't you dare try to pin this on us. 72, Caleb corrected automatically, then froze when he realized he'd said too much. Cruz's brows arched. Interesting. You remember the exact number. For the first time, Caleb's mask cracked. His grin faltered, his eyes darted toward the door like a trapped animal. "Mr. Whitmore," Cruz said, her tone like iron, "you should know lying to federal investigators is another felony. I suggest you answer carefully." Mom grabbed his sleeve, her voice breaking. "Caleb, please, just tell her it was a mistake. Tell her you'll fix it." He jerked away from her. "No, you don't get it. I had to do this. My startup, this was my shot. I finally had something real, and she—" He jabbed a finger at me, spit flying. "She left it all to rot while she ran off playing secret agent. I did what had to be done." I stared at him, stunned at how quickly he unraveled. "What you did," I said quietly, "was prove every doubt I ever had about you." The room held its breath. Cruz tapped her radio once, then fixed Caleb with a steady stare. "Agents are on the way. You can keep talking, but everything you say will go in my report. And right now, you're digging your own grave." Caleb's breathing quickened. He looked at Mom, at Dad, at the buyers, and finally back at me. His grin was gone. His voice came out ragged, desperate. "You're not going to let them do this to me. You're my sister." I didn't move. "And you stopped being just my brother when you signed my name." Outside, heavy footsteps echoed on the porch. The second knock boomed through the house, louder, final. The storm had arrived, and this time, Caleb had nowhere to run. The second knock rattled the glass in the front door. Not polite, not hesitant. It was the kind of knock that announced authority. Caleb stiffened, backpack strap sliding through his fingers, eyes darting like a cornered animal. Cruz didn't flinch. She crossed the room, her radio buzzing with clipped voices. "Come in," she called, voice calm but commanding. The door swung wide, and 3 agents stepped inside, all in dark jackets with bold yellow lettering across the chest. FBI. Their presence filled the house in an instant. Heavy boots on the hardwood, the scent of cold air and rain clinging to them. "Target confirmed?" one asked. Cruz pointed directly at Caleb. "That's him, Caleb Whitmore, suspect in a federal property fraud case." Caleb's smile collapsed. "Wait, hold on. This is insane." The tallest agent moved fast, blocking his path to the door. Another circled to his left. Caleb tried to step back, but the table corner dug into his hip. He was boxed in. Mom gasped, clutching Dad's arm. "No, please, this is a mistake. He didn't mean—" "Ma'am." Cruz cut her off without looking. "Stay back. Interfering will not help him." Adam muttered, "Holy hell," while Melissa pressed herself into the far wall, wide-eyed. The cash they'd handed Caleb might as well have been blood money now. One agent pulled a folded document from his pocket, flipping it open. Warrant for the arrest of Caleb Whitmore under suspicion of wire fraud, property fraud, and forging federal documents. The words hung heavy, undeniable. Caleb barked a laugh, the sound jagged and desperate. "Wire fraud? Property fraud? You're twisting this. This was family business, a misunderstanding." The taller agent stepped closer. "Turn around, sir." "Hands where I can see them." Caleb's eyes darted wildly, searching for an ally. They landed on me. "Lauren, tell them this was between us. Tell them I was helping." I didn't move. "You weren't helping. You were stealing." His face twisted. "You always hated me having anything. This is your revenge." Cruz snapped her fingers, sharp as a gunshot. The agents moved. One grabbed Caleb's wrist, twisting it behind his back. The other yanked the backpack off his shoulder, tossing it onto the floor. It hit with a heavy thud. Bundles of cash spilled out, rubber bands snapping. Mom cried out. Dad's face drained of color. Adam swore under his breath, recognizing the bills. Caleb thrashed, voice rising. "That's my money. They gave it to me fair and square. You can't—" The metallic click of cuffs cut him off. The sound echoed, final. "You're under arrest," the agent said, reciting the rights with practiced precision. Caleb jerked against the grip, but there was no slipping free. Mom lunged forward, but Cruz blocked her with a single raised arm. "Ma'am, step back now." Tears streamed down Mom's face. "You can't take him. He's my son." "And he's my brother," I said quietly. But he made his choice. Caleb whipped his head toward me, cuffed hands straining. You think you've won? You think this house makes you better than me? You're nothing without me, nothing. I met his glare with steady calm. Funny, because I built everything in my life without you. The agents hauled him upright. His bravado cracked, voice breaking into frantic pleas. Wait, just give me a chance. I can pay it back. I can fix this. Fix it? Adam barked a bitter laugh from the corner. You robbed us blind. You ruined us. Melissa's voice shook. We're out $72,000 because of you. Don't talk about fixing. Caleb's face contorted, anger spilling into raw desperation. It's not gone. It's seed money. My startup. Your startup, Cruz interrupted, her tone surgical, was never more than a fantasy. This money will be entered as evidence, and you'll be explaining it in court. They started to drag him toward the door. He dug his heels into the floor, shouting over his shoulder. Mom! Dad! Do something! Mom sobbed into Dad's chest, but neither moved. Dad's shoulders slumped for the first time I could remember, the weight of reality finally crushing his bluster. Caleb's voice cracked. Lauren, you can't let them. But I didn't answer. The agents shoved him through the doorway. His protests spilled into the night air, echoing down the block until the sound was swallowed by the slam of the patrol car door. The silence that followed was suffocating. Cruz turned back, eyes sweeping the room. The investigation will continue. For now, the suspect is in custody. She fixed Adam and Melissa with a cold stare. We'll need statements from both of you. Adam nodded stiffly, still glaring at the pile of spilled cash. Melissa wiped her eyes, silent. My parents stayed rooted in the corner, pale and broken. Mom finally whispered, You could have stopped this, Lauren. I looked at her, my voice low but unshaken. No, Mom, he could have. Cruz gathered the papers, the backpack, the cash, all evidence now. She gave me a small nod, professional but not unkind. You did the right thing. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The house was still mine, but the cost of keeping it had been paid in something heavier than money. Truth dragged screaming into the open. The agents shoved him into the car, red lights flaring. His shouts faded as the door slammed, but the silence that followed was worse. Behind me, my mother whispered the words I knew were coming. Lauren, this is your fault. The patrol car's taillights bled into the dark, siren wailing faintly as it carried Caleb away. The red-blue glow still flickered across the living room walls when Mom's whisper cut the silence like a blade. Lauren, this is your fault. I turned, slow and deliberate. My fault? Dad's face was tight, jaw rigid. You could have stopped it. You could have told them it was a mistake, that you'd work it out as family. I laughed, sharp, bitter. Work it out? He forged my name. He stole $72,000. He sold my house out from under me. And you call that family? Mom's eyes brimmed with tears. He's your brother. He just needed support. He's always been the dreamer, and you're so rigid. You never bend. Rigid? My voice rose. You mean responsible. I've carried myself without stealing, without lying, without dragging anyone else down. And you hate that I don't collapse the way he does. Adam shoved forward, jabbing a finger at me. Don't act like you're the victim here. We paid him. Cash. Where's our money, Lauren? Because if it doesn't come back, we're coming after you. Cruz stepped between us, voice like iron. Careful, Mr. Clark. Threats against a federal witness don't end well. Melissa tugged at Adam's arm, whispering for him to stop, but his eyes burned with fury. We'll see you in court. Mom's sobbing filled the space. Please, Lauren, don't let them take him away forever. He's not strong like you. Prison will break him. He broke himself, I snapped. All I did was stop him from breaking me too. The room went still. My parents stared like they didn't recognize me. Adam seethed. Melissa bit her lip until it bled. And Agent Cruz, calm as ever, slid the folder of evidence under her arm and said the only words that mattered. This isn't over. Tomorrow, it gets worse. The courthouse smelled of polish and nerves. I sat in the second row, Agent Cruz on one side of me, an empty chair on the other. Mom and Dad were across the aisle, stiff and pale, their hands folded like prayer might change the outcome. Caleb shuffled in wearing county orange, cuffs clinking at his wrists. His swagger was gone. He looked smaller, thinner, stripped of the arrogance that had filled every room since we were children. For a second, I almost didn't recognize him. But when his eyes found mine, the venom was the same. The judge read the charges, voice steady. Forgery of federal documents, property fraud, wire fraud. Caleb flinched with each word. "Do you have anything to say before sentencing?" the judge asked. Caleb's chin lifted. He scanned the room, landed on our parents, then on me. His voice cracked but carried. "I just wanted a chance. I was building something. Everyone wanted me to fail, especially her." He jerked his cuffed wrists toward me. "She's always been against me." The judge's gavel struck once, silencing him. "You weren't building. You were stealing. And now you'll serve. 3 years. Federal prison." Mom gasped. Dad shook his head slowly, as if he could undo the verdict by denying it. Caleb's curses followed him out as the bailiff led him away, his voice growing thinner with each step. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Adam and Melissa Clark pushed past them, faces drawn tight. "We'll sue for restitution," Adam snapped. "We'll drag this family through court if we have to." Cruz stepped forward, holding her badge just high enough. "You'll file paperwork and wait in line like everyone else. Try anything else, and you'll answer to me." Melissa tugged Adam back, whispering furiously. They left, muttering promises of lawyers and revenge. My parents lingered on the courthouse steps, avoiding my eyes. Finally, Mom said, her voice thin, "You didn't have to let it come to this. He's your brother." I stared at her, years of silence pressing against my ribs. "No, Mom. He stopped being just my brother when you let him steal from me. You chose him every time he failed. This time, I chose myself." She flinched like I'd struck her. Dad's shoulders sagged. Neither spoke again. Cruz touched my arm, grounding me. "It's over. You did what had to be done." But I wasn't sure it was over. Not yet. That evening, I walked through the house alone. My house. The curtains were mine again, the furniture where I'd left it before Caleb had staged it for his lie. Every surface hummed with memory and violation. I touched the dining table, remembering Cruz pinning the forged deed against its wood. I touched the doorframe, remembering the agents pouring in, boots heavy on the floor. And then I locked the front door, the key turning smooth, final. For the first time in months, the silence didn't feel like threat. It felt like ownership. But before I could breathe, the phone buzzed. A restricted number. I almost ignored it, but something in me said answer. Caleb's laugh echoed faintly. "This isn't over." I put the phone down on the table, picked up the house key, and locked the door again. "It is now."